The parable of the unforgiving servant, Matthew 18, verses 21 to 35. Peter asked Jesus a question. How many times should I forgive someone who has done something bad to me? As many as 7 times? This seemed very forgiving to Peter. Jesus replied, "Let me tell you a story about 2 slaves. The first slave owed his king 10,000 talents, more money than he could ever pay back. The king came to him saying, 'It's time to pay up. If you don't have the money, you'll have to sell everything you own, your house, your possessions, even your wife and children.' The slave begged him for more time. Seeing his distress, the king said, 'I've changed my mind. You are released from the debt.' Straight away, the first slave went out and met another slave. The second slave owed the first slave a smaller amount, just 100 denarii. 'Pay up what you owe me,' the first slave demanded. The second slave begged, just as the first one had, 'Please have patience. I need more time to pay.' There was no pity in the first slave, though. He had the man who owed him money thrown into prison, saying he wouldn't be set free until he'd paid his debt. Of course, all of this was reported back to the king, who was extremely angry. 'I had mercy on you,' he shouted at the first slave. 'Shouldn't you have mercy on your fellow slave?' The king handed the man over to be thrown into prison until he had paid everything he owed. Jesus looked at Peter and his other disciples. 'So you must forgive more than 7 times. Let's say 77 times. You really have to forgive people with your hearts, not just your mouths. If you don't, my heavenly Father will be cross with you, just like he was cross with his slave.'" What Jesus was trying to get Peter to understand, and he wants us to understand it too, we shouldn't worry about keeping count of how many times we've forgiven someone. We should just keep on forgiving. Isn't that what God does? He doesn't keep count of how many times he's forgiven us. He just keeps on forgiving. So if someone were to ask you, "How many times should I forgive?" what would your answer be?